got a kind of weird situation here. We're back with flying colors, of course. I thought I was going to be playing Frigate Bay. So I set up my third table thinking I need a 3-map situation. And then I noticed, shit, Sadras comes before that. Just by 9 days, I think, before. But then I thought to myself, when I read the Admiral Hughes sails for the Indian Ocean, starts doing some raiding there, blah, 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 without any problem. Then Suffern shows up on the 15th of February. Hughes' fleet raises anchor, pursues him. 2 days later, the fleets engage in what would be one of several engagements between the two admirals. And then I thought to myself, there's a campaign game. This may be it. And yeah, there's one campaign scenario, and it starts with this Sadras scenario. So I broke down my extra table because all 4 battles which will be handled are just 2 mappers. Now I might need it if I need to roll, but chances are I can fit everything on there. So this is our initial situation. The British are going to have the Audacity, the wind. Both fleets are beating, but it's a fairly simple battle. We got a couple of columns coming at each other. So what's special about a campaign? Well, a campaign doesn't have a lot different. First of all, there's no break checks. If you're 10 hexes away from the enemy, though, you can declare you're gone. Wait. Each player has the option of withdrawing any ship. You have to have the lower Audacity first, and then you take options to remove. If a player passes on the option, no ships may be removed. So if the person with the lower Audacity removes a ship, the other person can refuse to remove any, and then it's not over. The person with higher Audacity never gets the first choice, I guess. I don't know. It says each player has the option. Yeah, I think you're allowed to remove your own ships to whatever extent you like. Anyway, whatever. When the battle is completed, you calculate victory points. The winner gets 10 bonus points. That'll be assigned to the fleets. Any captured ships can be added to the capturing player's fleet. We haven't seen a lot of captured ships, but with an unlimited time period, damaged stuff is going to be able to be captured. And then use a similar ship with no better values. And then you're allowed to repair ships. First you must repair marine hits. Those cost a victory point to repair all the marine hits. 1 victory point will restore 10 rigging hits. 1 will restore 8 hull hits. Any additional unused victory points can be used to roll on the reinforcement table, and you get scheduled reinforcements available if you succeed in getting a roll. And you can also bank victory points, but you must conduct repairs first. Both sides give victory points. It's not a matter of that, oh geez, I lost the battle, so I will not recover. There is some time in between. And then you set up a new battle. There's some rules for leaders. If you have new leaders on the different scenarios, you get these new leaders. If a leader's killed, you get a subordinate raised to fleet admiral, and you get a new leader who's 1 less than the old fleet admiral, or the old leader. After the final battle, you tally the victory points from that battle, and any banked points are added in, and whoever gets the most wins the campaign. And there's going to be 4 battles for this, listed as follows. And I'll just be, looks like 5 actually. Looks like I'll just run through these. I may play some games in between them, keeping track of the ships in between battles, whatever. But yeah, it should be kind of an interesting experience. And this may actually be the last of my, I don't know. I'm getting pretty tired of doing these flying color scenarios because without any terrain, they're just not terribly exciting. You know, you got a column coming in, you got a column coming in. The campaign was really kind of the exciting thing for me. I wish there was kind of a strategic or operational game that this linked into. I'm kind of thinking about, gosh, if the Russian one fits, Summer Scralla. Could play that out with these battles. That would be real interesting, actually. Anyway, that's the kind of thing I used to be really into doing. Now I've got so many damn games, I just kind of want to stop playing this and move on to something else, but it's really hard for me to do that. This may be the proper ending point. I'll probably have full sails on everything to begin with. What are our admirals like? Hughes is pretty good. Suffern's even better. Sweet. Okay, so we got a couple good admirals here. The French look like they actually outnumber the English. And gun-wise, it doesn't look terribly different. We don't have any big ships here. You wouldn't send a lot out to the Indies, right? These are the East Indies, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. You'd be keeping your major fleets in the Atlantic at this time, I guess. Should be neat. Okay, the English have the audacity advantage in this, and, well, the French actually have a wind advantage. It wasn't clear to me because both were beating, but then as soon as I looked, if the French turn, which they've done, the English got the initiative, they forced the French to move, they're coming straight in at the English. The English would perhaps have to maintain column. So, in order to face that, I'm doing something I usually avoid doing, that complicated wear maneuver in the face of the enemy to try to get around on them and have the wind to my advantage, where I'm heading more this way than, well, having to tack. Attack probably would have been easier, to tell you the truth, and then I would be beating up towards the French that way, but this wear allows me to kind of get some distance and put myself maybe on one section of the French line. What's important about this is there's no break rules in this scenario. Now, I don't think that's correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play out what I've always talked about, which is the let's finish the scenario after the break. So I'm still going to roll for breaks, but there also, actually there is a time limit in this, isn't there? Which takes everything out of. No, there's no turn limitation, and there's not supposed to be a break roll. I am going to keep the break roll in place because I think that a fleet wouldn't stick around and take continual damage, and it's possible for the weaker fleet to drive the stronger fleet away, or vice versa. But then I'm going to have to play out the pursuit of that. A break roll doesn't end the game right away. At the end of 2, you can see the French are approaching fast, and this is kind of scary. This is not a safe maneuver upper. I thought there was enough distance here, but again, with full sails on and the wind and reaching with the wind, you can really move fast and cover a lot of that ground. Of course, they're going to have to drop those full sails probably after the next move. Again, the Brits got the initiative, forced the French to go. End of 4, and we see the English still kind of turning, and the French are almost in position to strike. They've dropped their studded sails except on their right flank. What this almost shows is the advantage of simple maneuvers in this game as opposed to actually trying to do anything kind of clever and gain an advantage. This is not a game largely about maneuvering. You can cover those big distances fairly quickly if you've got the wind. And you know, I mean, there was some thought, hey, the French could have formed up a double line because that's more powerful. The hell with that. You want to do the simplest thing. You're already set up, line of battle is there. It's kind of like a Great Battles of History scenario. Most of those set you up without a lot of room for maneuver. You don't really have a chance to develop your own tactics in the game at the, you know, initial level. You can try to cope with the situations as they arise, and it becomes more a matter of trying to maintain your command structure, keep your units in formation and such not, while still dealing damage, as opposed to a game where you can do some broad sweeping moves. You know, I mean, if the French had formed that double column, well, the English would have been able to complete their maneuver, but instead, they're getting caught with actually a double line that they're slowly, you know, as they're trying to make this turn. So, in a way, maybe this isn't such a terrible thing because the English have that solid double line to cope with. I don't know. So the Brits forced the French to move first, and the French line up and take their first fire at rigging, range 4. This is where they want to be. No carronades in play here. I gotta look at the carronade chart. I don't remember when it kicks in. 87. We're still in like 82 or so. The change where the French start actually deploying them. The English get to move now. Unfortunately, all their ships except for this one, which is on fire and just as much in trouble, have their full sails up. So I kind of want to continue this maneuver and start dropping that extra rigging before I actually fire. I don't want to fire with those penalties, I don't think. Although I'm losing some of my movement as my rigging starts getting knocked down pretty hard. English start preparing for battle by removing those extra sails. Doesn't look pleasant to me though for them, not at all. Always got to give the English some kind of disadvantage to even things up though, because they have the audacity in this one, and they have their normal firing advantage, that, along with the carronades, that just makes them blow the French out of the water, so the French can't actually engage. Historically, the French did very well during these engagements, but I don't see how to keep the distance long enough to pound the rigging down too much, unless the English are always making dumb moves like this. All right, no change of wind for the situation. The English, well, they were all in command, but now they're beginning to fall out. Basically, this line here is where the admiral is, and that's all going to be in command for next turn. This guy had to break formation because this one was too slow, but how slow this was has caused these guys to fall out, and actually this guy over here, the hero, he's gotten outside of the range that's necessary to be in formation. So, to some extent, the English might just give up their column and try to work just off Hughes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That'll leave this guy out, but catch most of the rest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think I'd get kind of all of these. I'd have 3 ships out of formation. Otherwise, I have to abandon the 3 ships closest to the French line, although they're trying to form up into another column formation. That's causing problems. Now, we saw first fire from the English. Some of it firing at rigging. Others have been shooting hulls. You've got a few hull hits here. And now the French get to try and follow the English formation or else slice through it. Either one's an option here. I think I kind of like the idea of trying to slice through this, take a shift, because this wind, this beating situation is just not good for them. And lack of sail is forcing the French actually to fall out of command too. If I follow a formation command rule, I only get these 3 ships. I think I can get a little further because Suffern's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can get 4 ships into command using, just his really booming voice. But that means all these back here are kind of more in trouble. So we're kind of seeing this disruption of the 2 formations. They're going to try to reform and see what they end up with. It looks to me like the English are probably going to be cutting up this way, and the French are going to try and get themselves into a line formation. But we may not see a lot of firing on the next turn. Let's see about that flaming rack. And it's not really a rack. Nothing's really damaged. Long-range fire doesn't do much. And that goes away. I've got some counters to remove, but that's about it, really. The Brits open up with the initiative and choose to move their in-command units. They have a couple of out-of-command units, which look like they're going to join the main formation running through here. This guy's going to be out, and these guys are facing the wrong way. The other option, of course, is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Getting almost nothing in command. They're not going to get any addition if they use the range. Now the French get to move, and they pretty much can do whatever they like at this point. They can either move their in-command ships or their out-of-command. The out-of-commands are pretty much out of range for any real firing anyhow. Although if they get lucky, they may be able to use them. But the in-command ships, I'm planning on slicing across the aft of these guys. It looks pretty good for the French in terms of the immediate positioning. We'll see how it kind of develops. And by doing the French, by doing their in-command units first, have actually cut off a possible fire by this unit. But, well, they did some pretty devastating damage. You can see there's a damaged ship here, and they also got 6 hits here on the Exeter. So they're dealing some pretty significant firepower out by closing there. So you can't complain too much, although this guy may not have even gotten a shot. Now it's on the Brits, and they're going to have to move one, or maybe both. I'll probably make them pass both their out-of-command ships and then move all the French together. Well, that looks like the situation at the end of 6, and the French have gotten all their ships in command, actually. And just barely. Got to be careful not to let this guy get too much separated from the column, because otherwise everything will be out of command. That's where my commander is, which is kind of a weird place for him to be. The English, on the other hand, are going to have trouble. These guys are not going to be in command, and neither is this guy. So they've still got some difficulty. We got a bunch of the ships with full sails still up. I've got to pull those down. Probably be backing sails anyway. I don't want to be moving that fast because it's the trailing end that's undergoing some serious rigging hits there. So far it looks like the French have the advantage overall. The damage to the ships, the English have done a little bit more hull damage, but when you start counting in all that rigging damage, they're going to have trouble maneuvering their squadron. The French have much less rigging damage on their ships, really. You can see this poor thing is pretty much done for. It's going to be generating, 2 movement points, full beam reaching, and it's going to have to try to move around, get into another beam reach. It probably wants to try to get out of the fight, actually. The French squadron have completed their movement, passing through in some close range shots here at these poor out of control guys. They were able to line up shots where the out of controls really didn't get a shot back. Now, both of these are going to get to fire on their own turn, but they're pretty badly hammered. This one has to make a roll. As for the rest of the fleet, the fleet, they've pushed forward and lined up some distance shots. Now, with the wind cutting this way, the English have a lot of trouble coming in on the French. They especially don't particularly want to do it with their full sails up. Those have made them more of a target. This guy had his rigging knocked down because of it. The others have taken some rigging shots. The French are really kind of closing in at a mid-range, damaging the English maneuverability, and then they hope to be able to, through being more maneuverable, to do some fancy maneuvers to get good shots on the English ships. We'll see how that works. It worked pretty well here. It may work well at the other end of the line as well. This whole campaign may be over very quickly if the French manage to continue to do the ducking and weaving they've been doing. They've had the wind advantage really all scenario, and it's that which allows them to really take advantage of the rigging fire situation, because the English can't come close for the most part. All right, on to the English. Well, a lucky shot at the very end of the turn takes Suffern out, kills him. A 9 and then a 0. That's actually what was required. That means the whole French squadron's out of command. They really want to get out of here. They can't fight when they're out of command. So they're going to work on a disengagement policy. That's going to put them at a severe disadvantage for the rest of the campaign, I think. We do have some vulnerable English, but I don't think that they're actually liable to strike. I'll see. Yeah, no chance of the British ship striking. The British admirals' quality is sufficient to prevent that from happening. So now we've got an interesting situation where the French have to get out of there. They've caused a lot more damage, I think. Hull damage, I'd say it looks about equal, even though we got a couple of crippled ships. It is sufficient there too, but there's a decent amount of rigging damage on those English ships. This would have been a good battle for the French. They got to get out of here, though. Well, the English being downwind of the French, they've turned. They got the initiative, but they turned their fleet to try to pursue. I don't see. It's a weird situation because, well, the French ships have a little bit more mobility. Although we did open fire and do some rigging damage to this thing, our own trailing ship is in terrible shape here. Barely able to move at all at this point, and certainly not able to chase. These guys kind of side-slipped to try to join this fleet, but then they didn't make the turn into it, so they won't be in command next turn. However, they're in pretty bad shape in terms of being pursuing ships. They got to figure out what to do with the French. They can only move one at a time, presumably. Before the English get to move this thing, and then they get to move the rest. So I could just turn around and head away. I'm a little faster. On the other hand, I'm not sure it makes sense when the English have the worse wind position right now. I might as well try to zoom past them. What I can't do is side slip here, because I'll be moving into them. I'm not sure the French are playing this wisely. They actually sailed up. A couple of these French ships made their 0 roll and got some shots, plinks in on some of the English line. And they actually side-slipped in, just like I said they wouldn't. Then they threw up their extra sail, and that may be a mistake. I had already decided to do it. Quite simply because the English can sail up and unload one more set of fire. Now that's really a big deal, mainly in terms of knocking a bunch of rigging down. The odds of hitting rigging are higher. If they can actually slow one of these ships down enough that most of their fleet can keep up with it, or a significant portion, then the French have a little bit more trouble. If it looks clear that the French squadron can outpace most of the English fleet, these guys with a couple of hits on them, they can't put full sail up at all, well, then the rest of the English fleet probably can't pursue very closely, at least as they can't pursue at a speed at which they'll leave behind these slower ships. All right, let's see what happens. Powerful about that full sail is what you just saw here. The French moved from here 1, 2, 3 to turn this way, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then back into getting 8 movement points. The English are not going to be able to catch up with that, but they do have one more chance to fire. And basically, I should have some out of command markers for a couple of those. ships that don't have them yet. I'm not worried about the French out of command. We're just assuming that at this point. All right, well, the main English squadron's got to move into play and see if it can do some damage to the rigging on those French. Pushing into turn 10, this is a potential wind change turn coming up, which could spell issues. The French have sort of slipped away. They can kind of side slip by making a turn, moving forward. We saw what happened with the lead ship. Well, most of them managed this, but a few got caught by some of the fire of the English ships and really reduced below what they can have their full sails up on. More than that, they're actually slower than a few of the English ships. So they're not really going to be able to maintain, to extend their distance particularly. However, the English have to be kind of careful not to just send one ship in to a squadron of 3 ships. They may also kind of keep some of the French ships nearby so that they could swoop in if need be. I'm not sure. This guy can't even escape quite yet, and he's our furthest away. Most of the ships have full sails up. They could get out of there. I think I can probably save the whole squadron, but this battle may continue as a running battle, because remember, whenever you fire at a ship, it does get to fire back, and its allies get to fire back too. The normal defensive fire still applies. The only thing that the French can't do is shoot at the English just for moving up. So an English ship can actually sail up real close with its bow facing you, and you can't do a thing about it. But once it turns and unloads a broadside, all the French ships that can beat on it will fire. All right, onward. First things first, the wind changed. So now everybody's running. The English got the initiative. They slid forward, and got themselves into a reaching position. But now they didn't get a lot of shots in, and the French are going to be able to pull away with most of their ships. This ship, though, is shot up enough that it's actually in serious danger. And maybe some of the other laggards are more likely to get away, I think. But that one looks like it's at risk. On the other hand, from last turn, we wrecked one British ship, and this guy is dismasted, which means he's in a lot of trouble too. The way things look to me, as we finish turn 10, is that the French are going to lose the Sphinx. It's going to surrender. The rest of the ships, I think, are going to get out of there. This one is as slow, or maybe slower than a couple of ships, though, so as is this one. So there's a possibility that the English might try to trap another French ship or two. The ones with full sails up are pretty much guaranteed out if they want out. However, they might kind of hang around a little bit to help shepherd these guys. This poor Sphinx, though, it's on fire, and it's about as slow as things get right now. So even these kind of slower, crippled ships can catch up to it and do some damage. Moving into the next turn, the English are kind of swarming in to try to get into position here. They were largely out of command just because they had stretched out too far. We dismasted this thing. It was on fire too. Some fire into the rigging there. It hasn't struck yet, but it probably will. Well, it almost certainly will. There's no way out of this situation, and there's a couple of heavier ships. They can start pounding the hull on it, but overall that's kind of foolish. What I kind of want to do is stay within 5 hexes, but not in its firing arc anymore. So I want to get away from its firing arc. So that's going to be hard. I'm going to be sailing through them. It's especially bad because I'm right up against it, so it's going to get a shot if it moves. If it takes an action, it got a shot this time. It can hardly hit at these distances, especially when it was on fire. It's a 6th rate at like range 3. But my goal here is to take these guys out. This guy's been traveling kind of slower in order to stay behind and maybe help. Because we're looking at 3 English ships that have a speed advantage on this little trailing squadron here. So keeping 3 French ships behind, or maybe even a 4th one, would make sense. I'm starting to throw ships off the map that have already disengaged, though. Turn 13, and it's only important to keep track of the turn because of the wind gauge changing. French look like they're gaining some distance. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I don't get closer to them pretty soon, I'm in trouble here with the English. This ship can keep pace, though. That's the problem. But there's only a couple of ships that are really able to gain on them. This still hasn't struck colors, which means it has a very slight chance, 1 in 10, of being able to unload its guns. But right now it's just sitting there kind of thinking about what to do. The rest of the French ships I've pulled off the map. A couple more turns have passed, and this rear ship, one of the 2 heroes in the game, the French version, actually has gotten kind of tagged with some long-range rigging fire, and it's in some definite difficulty. And I'm still debating whether or not these guys want to turn and try to help it or not. I kind of want to try to stretch this out as much as possible to get away from more damaged ships on the English line and see if I can trick some of the faster ships into play. This thing's still not surrendered or struck, and it's firing, and the English are not firing at it because, well, it's a better prize if they don't wreck it. But I think they are going to have to unload on it just to reduce its effect. It's got a chance of doing some damage still. Not much of one. It's like a 6th rate if I could get some distance, but this poor sucker's so slow. I mean, he could wreck it, but that would hurt me overall. Anyway, we're on a wind change turn coming up. So I can take these firepower markers off, and we'll see if we get an effect on that. This is turn 15, actually. No. So the initiative might be important. If the English get the initiative, they can slide these guys up and do some long-range fire that they can't do if the French get the first moves. Looks like the English have it because they have an admiral and they have audacity, so they're going to get to jump in with their trailing ship. Here on turn 18, this fella, who is he? The Sphinx has finally struck colors. And he's not automatically captured, but essentially it's going to be this ship can go in and grab him without any real problem. The rest of the squadron, well, this poor fella has been losing the rigging duel. These guys don't want to close with this much of an English squadron. So I think what's going to happen is these guys are going to withdraw. Although there is some possibility that these 2 ships could swing in and take them. That looks like a fairly even fight. In fact, if anything, the French have the advantage with a little bit more strength. There's still some chance they might swing in and try to get into the fight, but the problem is we got 4 more ships in the background, and I don't think that's worth going. I think I'm going to have to sacrifice the hero here, which was my flagship, actually, and it's quite a potent ship. We'll see what kind of damage it does as it's being taken down, but basically once it's dismasted, which isn't too far, we're at 12 right now, it's pretty much over. Much at the end here, I'm ignoring these guys, assuming that they're busy securing the prize in this thing as well. This isn't actually possible to even strike, not that that would be an issue. But these guys have dismasted the hero. The other French ships have left. This one was the Eagle. It was on fire for some time. You can see the rigging has taken some definite hits beyond where it was. It was one of those. It was 4 mastheads, and now it's up to 9. These guys are going to slowly creep forward just to try to stay in range. Now, the hero can fire on them, but mainly they're trying to keep within 5 hexes with the idea that whatever little damage that thing can do to them is worth taking for the value of the prize that's less damage. I've played a couple of turns here, and I'm getting kind of tired of moving all these ships. When this thing's here, it's going to strike. And the thing is, it only has a 1 in 10 chance of being able to fire. because it's out of command and the Brits aren't firing on it. I'm just going to call it as a struck ship. So we captured 2 ships, the 3rd and 4th rate. Pretty good combination. A lot of damage to them, obviously. And the French fleet, most of it escaped, but now I've got to figure out what the next scenario is going to look like. I guess I should score this, because that's the next step. The ships the French damaged are worth 3.5 victory points, and the points that the Brits get, well, they get 36 points. Double the value of the 2 struck ships, which are worth 8, and 4 is 24. Huh, I got that wrong. This is worth 6. I miscounted here. This is worth 4 is 10. That's worth 20 points. 6 points for killing Suffern, so I'm at 26, and then 10 bonus points for winning the scenario overall. So they get to repair a lot, the French do not. Now this is weird, because the actual scenario here, Sadras is February 1782. The next one is over here in Providian, which is sometime in April. I think you have to kind of say, well, you don't know that that's really the next battle. Maybe the French fleet gets kind of in a position where it's more difficult for them to repair. Maybe because they were defeated so heavily, they can't get to their supplies as easily or whatever. Whereas the English obviously are going to have time to repair this whole fleet. That feels a little fuzzy to me, but such is life. A little screwy here. When repairing a ship, even a captured one, all marine hits must be repaired before any other type of damage. 1 victory point restores all marine hits. I assume per ship, but that's not specified here. And later, 1 victory point restores 10 rigging hits, 1 restores 8 hull hits. The others sound like they're distributed across the fleet. So I'm going to have to kind of look and figure out, well, the Sphinx and the Heroes were the 2 that fell. So the French are going to have to spend 1 point on their Marines. And then they only have 2.5 points left to repair the rest of their ships. I'm going to go with rigging first. Because why? It strikes me that mobility is pretty important. Maybe I can avoid losing the next battle that way. Remember, retreating when you have the audacity advantage is an additional, it costs you half victory points for the ships. So it's about the same as the ships being damaged, and it kind of pushes them beyond the scope. The English, I hope, have enough to repair all this. They should. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right off for the Marines. And then I'll see what else I can repair. Alright, so at the end, the English have 11 points left after spending 11.5 on rigging, 6.5 on hulls, 7 on their points here for the Marines. And they've got both French ships completely revitalized, all their ships all up to snuff. The French, on the other hand, all their damage remains on the hull. All they've managed to do is get rid of all the rigging hits. So they've got a somewhat damaged fleet. Nothing too bad. The Hannibal with 4 hits against it is the worst out there. 1 point could have repaired all those hull hits. I think 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 8. But we're just going to say they didn't have enough time and supplies to get that damage fixed. The English fleet is obviously a lot stronger now. One of the things I don't know is if there are captured ships in the later scenarios. I could see that they've filled that out, and I'll have to keep an eye out for that none of the ships have changed hands in the scenarios, just to make certain there. Alright, well, we'll load this one up, and I'll set up the next scenario. from this little camp.